Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. Of course, you lucky people, and welcome to Monday's edition of the Doctor Who Daily. Now, there's no question about it. The Stephen Moffat Doctor Who era is really inconsistent, controversial, and divisive for many people, and Moffat loved it that way. He is the Zack Snyder of Doctor Who. But why is it that we had the first female Doctor and everyone went ballistic, but Stephen Moffat gave us River Song, starring Alex Kingston, and Missy, starring Michelle Gomez? And why do people love those strong female Doctor Who characters, but haven't exactly warmed, or most people haven't exactly warmed, to Jodie Whittaker's iteration of the Doctor? People went ballistic that we were going to get the first female Doctor. Not everyone, but there is a minority of people that are angry with Chibnal and the BBC for casting a female Doctor. There's no question about that. They can wrap it up in other ways and other reasons, but that's the way they're not happy. But let's look at Stephen Moffat. He took the second most iconic character in this universe, apart from the Doctor, the Master, changed the Master's name to Missy, and made the Master a female, and literally made this character dramatically more different than we'd ever seen before. Not a whimper, not a complaint. Of course there are a few whispers in places, but ultimately she worked. People like her. Alex Kingston's Professor River Song, the Doctor's great love, works. You know, it's very controversial to give the Doctor, you know, a lover, a partner. A lot of people didn't like the Rose thing because that was rather immature and it was for Tumblr fangirls. We know that. And that's obvious, that's why Davies did it, and it worked for him. But River Song is a strong kind of, a woman who has Time Lord DNA in her as well. There's a lot of reasons why people shouldn't like River Song. There's people, there is a minority who don't like River Song. They don't like her dialogue, and they get annoyed with the sweetie and all of that. I think that River Song is a great character, and I think that Missy is a great version of the Master, if not the best version of the Master. Two strong females. So Moffat decided to represent and, you know, be inclusive to women by bringing two strong women in his era of Doctor Who. Wow, how daring. He brought River Song in somebody else's era because he was planning to run the show himself. That's forward thinking. That's great. No such thing in the connection from the, from the Moffat era to the Chibnal era, but two strong female characters. And as I say, not a whimper, not a bang within the fandom. They are now deemed as iconic fan favourites. And they were fan favourites at the time. Those characters and those actors playing them are perfect. The characters work. And as I say, they're part of the iconic legacy of this fantastic universe. So why were people so angry that we were going to get the first female Doctor? Well, there are some people who believe the Doctor should be a white straight male. I've said it on this show before, on this channel. There's no getting away from it. I don't agree with it. I always say with the Doctor can regenerate into anyone or anything, but you've got to get the casting right and the writing right. Chris Chibnall got the writing wrong, and in some corners, and I kind of believe this to a point, he got the casting wrong. But there's no point casting the best female actor if you're gonna give her peanuts, right? That's the problem. Jodie Whittaker wasn't fed properly. I don't know. I mean, when I think about Jodie Whittaker, she just doesn't scream the Doctor to me. She doesn't. But that's maybe because of Chibnall's writing and the way he's instructed her to perform the piece. The problem is, we will never know. There have been times where she looks pretty good and she comes across really well, but then they dumb it down and water it down again because they're always trying to make her this really positive, child-friendly doctor. Personally, don't think it works, but there you go. But Moffat understood, yeah, I want to be inclusive towards women. You know, Doctor Who has had strong women, even in the classic era. Not all of them were, by the way. Some of them were just there so men could look at their chests. You know, there's a fact. We can't hide away from that. That was the structure of, you know, the era that we were around in the 80s, 70s and 60s. There's no getting away from that. But Sarah Jane was a really strong character. Tegan was a really strong character. Susan was a really strong character. Barbara was a really strong character. So there's really great females in Doctor Who's past in the classic era. But there's no consistency there because that doesn't go for every female that's ever been on Doctor Who. But when we look at the 21st century and we look at what Moffat did, Moffat understood you couldn't just dump, you just couldn't recast the Master as a woman and make it bland or uninteresting, because then you're not being inclusive and you're not being representative of a strong woman. You're just saying, here's a token gesture, girl. Here's a token gesture, girls. That's it, I don't care. That's what Chibnal did, and the BBC. Here's a token gesture, girls. The first female doctor, and we're going to break the glass ceiling. The problem is, you don't break the glass ceiling by just saying, hey, she's a girl. And that's all you did. That's all you did. You didn't break the glass ceiling. But Missy, aka Michelle Gomez, did break the glass ceiling because she was well performed, well acted, and she was different and unique. And when Missy, aka Michelle Gomez, is on screen, you don't see anyone else. She was even outperforming the great iconic Peter Capaldi. That's how good she is. Brilliant. A brilliant version of the Master. She broke the glass ceiling. Michelle Gomez never once came out publicly talking about toxic masculinity or feminism, and for us men not to be afraid of her. She never said anything. If she ever speaks, she jokes. The woman's a joker in the best positive way. I've spoken to her once or twice on Twitter. She's wonderful. She's a beautiful person and she's very talented. She interacts with people. She's fun. She's talented, and we mostly love her. Now, she may not be your perfect Master. You may think you don't like the way she's. I love her, especially in her first kind of season, in season 8, when she's the way she kills people, the cold and calculated way. The woman's amazing. This is why you never had complaints. Some people complained about the Mary Poppins thing. It's just fun. It's just Moffat having fun. It's not controversial. It's wacky. This is what you can do with Doctor Who. You can be a bit wacky with your heroes and your villains. Look at Captain Jack Harkness. You know, kind of a guy who was a con artist who basically would shag anything that moves. But then he's inspired by the Doctor. Captain Jack's story was initially brilliant. I don't really have much interest in what I've seen from Captain Jack in the Chibnal era because there's nothing really going on with him. He doesn't really talk about his life or anything. He's just there to, you know, look, I'm Captain Jack. It's a bit like the first female Doctor. I'm just here to be the first female Doctor. Missy may be there to be the first female Master, but she's played by a brilliant artist, and Moffat thinks about everything that he does, even the stuff we didn't like. He thinks about it. His imagination is bubbling. He loves this fucking stuff. So that's why I didn't care about the Mary Poppins stuff. It was odd and it was weird, but that's Moffat for you. What do you expect from the guy who, you know, did that great Jekyll and Hyde miniseries, Jekyll, starring, what's his name? I forgot his bloody name now. One of my favourite actors, Jimmy Nesbitt. James Nesbitt to you guys and girls and everybody else. So this guy, Moffat, is a genius, but with geniuses, they're always hit and miss, aren't they? But yeah, he thought about it. And then, you know, River's Song is literally a female version of the Doctor. In fact, you know, this actor who played River's Song, you know, Alex Kingston, could have been a great Doctor. But then again, Michelle Gomez could have been a great Doctor, right? So it proves if Moffat ever got the chance to cast a female Doctor, he would get it right because he thinks about things. He brought in Karen Gillan. It worked. He brought in Arthur Darvill. It worked. He brought Jenna Louise Coleman in. It worked for most of the audience, if not everyone. It works. He brought in Pearl Mackie. She was brilliant. And it goes on and on and on. A lot of the stuff that he tried worked. Some of it didn't work. But at least Moffat comes from a genuine place of, yes, I want to be inclusive. I want to be representative of women, of minorities, but I'm not just going to give you a token gesture. And that's exactly what Chris Chibnal and the BBC did. They did exactly what you see from Hollywood. They want to talk about compassion, they want to talk about kindness, they want to talk about representation and inclusion, and anyone who doesn't agree with them is a racist, this, that, or that. But it's not that simple. Wasn't it Malcolm X that told us to beware of the white liberal? Why is that? He called the white liberal a wolf in sheep's clothing. That they wanted to pretend that they were here for minorities, but really there was something more deeper, more nefarious going on. Now, I'm a liberal, by the way. I'm an English, Greek, Cypriot liberal. That's where I come from. I believe if someone's on the floor, you lift them up and you help them. And I believe in representation and inclusion. But what I'm saying to you is, these people are wolves in sheep's clothing. People like Chris Chibnal and people like the BBC, they don't really mean what they say. Because if they cared about proper representation and inclusion, then Chris Chibnal would have given, Yaz, a minority, character played by a minority actress, Mandip Gill, more to do, a characterization, a story arc, something. He gave her nothing. This is not representation. This is not inclusion. And we talk about Ryan again. He did nothing with Ryan. Nothing. And even Graham, who's a straight white man, he did nothing with him. It's not like he tried any harder with the white people, but it's just crazy. It's crazy. He just slapped a bunch of people, empty shells, covered by flesh, and said, right, here are my characters, and they're not even characters. But Stephen Moffat tried. So, at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with being inclusive. There's nothing wrong with casting a female doctor. But when you say you're going to break the glass ceiling, and you don't break the glass ceiling, that's very problematic. At the end of the day, we have a cultural problem within the entertainment industry right now where we're talking about representation, we're talking about inclusion, but we don't really follow through with it. And what's staring us all in the face with Chibnal is that he cast a female as the doctor. This was huge. So this means you're under intense pressure because there are people that want you to fail just for casting a female doctor. And when you do what Chibnal did and be lazy and not try at all with any characterizations for his first female doctor, even seeing the BBC marketing team started this breaking the glass ceiling, but they didn't do it. They failed on every level on good female representation. Chris Chibnal failed on every level for positive minority representation and inclusion, because it's not just about representing people and having them on the screen. It's not just about seeing yourself on the screen, because I've said that before. I grew up as an English, Greek, Cypriot boy who had Greek, Cypriot parents who were talking Greek to him all day, who never saw that culture on the television. I grew up with Doctor Who, Superman, lots of different things. None of those people were me. I wasn't seeing myself. But the point is, it's not about seeing yourself. It's about aspirations. These heroes that I grew up with were aspirational to me. Even though they didn't look like me, they didn't come from the same cultural background, they didn't have learning difficulties like I did. I had to go to special school, remedial lessons. None of these actors were me. None of these characters were me. But I aspired to be like them. I aspired to be like Christopher Reeve's Superman. He wasn't a Greek Cypriot eating a doner kebab while he's flying across the sky. But I aspired. I related. Batman, even the 1960s, silly Batman. I aspired to be like Batman. I aspired to be like Mike Donovan out of V. He was one of my great heroes from fiction. I wasn't seeing myself. It's not about seeing yourself. It's aspirational to see heroes on the screen and wishing that you could be them. And your imagination takes you to that world, and for a couple of hours or a 20-minute episode or a 45-minute episode or whatever, you are those characters that you aspire to be. I wanted to be Dirty Den. I wanted to be J.R. Ewing. It's aspirational. I wanted to be James Bond. Again, it's aspirational. This whole thing of seeing yourself in the big screen, on the screen at all, it doesn't make sense to me, because you don't want to be yourself. A lot of people, a lot of geeks and nerds don't want to be themselves. The whole point of watching film and reading books and watching television is to escape from being ourselves and seeing characters like the Doctor and aspiring to be like them. Now, this is what Peter Davison meant when he criticised the casting of a female Doctor. But I love Peter, and I don't think he should have been kind of, pushed out of Twitter, but I don't agree with him with what he said, because a guy can still look up to a female lead, a female character, and still aspire to be like her, or be her friend, or go down the pub with her, or whatever, right? You can still be aspirational about minorities playing lead characters and women. It doesn't change anything. What I'm saying to you, representation matters, but seeing yourself on the screen isn't really a thing, because once you see yourself on the screen, it's not a fantasy anymore. So the people who say this don't watch television, are not interested in fiction, and don't read books. These are political people with an agenda. These are political people with an agenda who don't care about stories, don't care about the industry, and don't care about, should I say, the franchises and, films and television they're talking about. So this is the thing. So for me, and I don't know about you, smash a like on the video, comment down below if you agree with me that fantasy is about aspirations and, aspiring to be like the characters that we see on the screen, aspiring to be in the worlds that we see on the screen. And it's not about seeing ourselves on the screen. But in terms of representation and inclusion, Chris Chibnal failed on every level. But in terms of representation and inclusion, Stephen Moffat succeeded. And that's the core difference here. Both had the same goal, representation and inclusion. But one understood that he still had to entertain people and give these actors a great role. And the other one said, nah, all I have to say is she's a minority, he's a minority, and she's a woman, and everyone will swallow it up, and we'll get 20 million viewers an episode. Well, maybe not 20 million, but top viewers. And it worked for a woman who it worked for the woman who fell to earth. But it didn't work consistently, because there was no foundation in Chris Chibnall's cement. And in the end, because of that, he lost his job. Because let's not pretend he was always going to do 3 years, and he and Jodie agreed. Yes, Jodie was only going to do 3 years because that's what they do. Most of the doctors do 3 years. I get it. But Chris Chibnall would have stayed for longer if his era was more successful. He got it wrong, he didn't try hard enough, and basically he was shaving against the grain constantly. You can cast a female doctor, but like any other version of the Doctor that you cast or has been cast, you have to sit there with your actor and decide this iconic character's characterizations and personality. Because the reason we all love the Doctor is because of the Doctor's characterization and personality. The character has mostly always been full of energy and knowledge. This Doctor doesn't look like she could change a bulb. That's the problem. And it's not about her gender, it's because no work has been done on character development. As I said the other day, you can't just pop a few custard creams in your mouth and say that's a characterization. It's terrible. Now, a few people may swallow that, no pun intended, as we're talking about biscuits, but at the end of the day, the intelligent audience will understand that it's so lazy and it's so uninteresting And this is why Chris Chibnal failed in terms of representation, inclusion and entertainment, but Stephen Moffat succeeded on all three. This has been the Doctor Who Daily. I'm Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. I will be back tomorrow with even more Doctor Who Daily. Like, share, comment, subscribe, smash that subscription button. Let me say that again. Smash that notification button so you don't miss this perfection, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Until then, goodbye.